Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our third EU Knowledge Valorisation talk. Our session today is about successful models of academia-industry cooperation. My name is Dominik Sobczak, and I'm Deputy Head of Unit for Industrial Research, Innovation and Investment Agendas in DG Research and Innovation. I will have the pleasure to be your host today. To achieve the green and digital transitions and to strengthen Europe's competitiveness, we must accelerate the private sector investments in research and innovation, and the translation of scientific excellence into innovation. The report by Mr. Mario Draghi underlines the critical role of academia-industry collaboration in this matter. Our main competitors do better, and we need to step up. The Commission has published a code of practice on academia-industry co-creation, which provides practical guidance for all actors. We are also working on initiatives to improve the capability of intermediaries that facilitate this cooperation. Research partnerships with industry, infrastructures, and regulatory advice are very practical ways to support researchers to translate their research results into innovative solutions for the market. Our speakers today will present their successful models for science-business collaboration in two strategic sectors for Europe: advanced materials and health. I'm joined today by Mrs. Deidre Cadden and Mr. Kurt Hillen, who will share with us their experiences working in these sectors. Before giving them the floor, I already invite you to send your questions via Slido, and here on the screen you can see the instruction how to get to the Slido for this session. Your questions will be the basis for our upcoming question and answer session towards the end of our program. Let me now turn to Deidre. Deidre, so you are International Engagement Manager at Amber Research Centre, based at Trinity College Dublin. Can you tell us what are the success factors in effective academia-industry collaboration from a university perspective?
I think that the great recipe for success is communication, a clear communication between both the industry and the academic partner. Clear messages about what each other can bring to the table, and professional project managers to help them achieve their goals, their research goals, and also knowledge valorisation goals for the project.
Can you introduce your ideas a bit more?
Certainly will. Thank you very much, Dominic, for the introduction and the invitation to speak. So I work in Amber, which is the Advanced Materials and Bioengineering Research Centre, based at Trinity College Dublin, as Dominic said. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the centre. So we're a research centre for materials science, based in Trinity College, with 9 other academic partners, which are listed on the slide there. UCC and the Royal College of Surgeons are founding partners along with Trinity. We're housed in the Cran Institute in Trinity College Dublin. We have over 90 researchers who work in advanced materials across different research themes, materials for information and communication technology, for health, for energy, and for sustainability. And the core areas of expertise in the centre are listed here: 2D and emerging materials, modelling and theory, characterisation, synthesis and fabrication, bioengineering and medical devices. And we have a complete suite of facilities to do this advanced materials research, from a state-of-the-art advanced microscopy lab, clean rooms, an additive manufacturing lab, and so on. Next slide, please. So this slide tells you a bit about our funding model. We're funded by Taoiseach Éireann, Research Ireland, formerly known as Science Foundation Ireland. They gave us an award in 2019, which was for €40 million. And with that money, we had to match that in industry and other grant funding, which includes European Commission funding and other national funding. So we collaborate with industry in one of two ways, either with bilateral industry projects or through European Commission consortia, such as European Innovation Council grants. Next slide, please. So Amber's mission is to deliver world-leading material science research with impact. And here are some of the statistics that we have to report to our funding agency. I'll just mention the ones of importance to industry, academia interaction. So you can see in the first pillar that 47% of the trainees, PhD students and postdocs from Amber go to industry as first destination. So there's a really important training element in the centre as well, filling skills gaps in areas of national and European priority. So in the second pillar, you can see our investigators have won over 30 European Research Council awards, which are, I think, testament to the excellence of the researchers. In the third pillar, we have 52 industry partners that we work with. And below that, you can see that the centre's PIs have published over 3,000 publications, and 270 of those are jointly co-authored with industry partners. So that's a nice story about the fundamental scientific knowledge and applied scientific knowledge working together into publications. And next slide, please. So this is how the bilateral projects with industry work. The company can come to us and do a fully funded project where the industry will own the foreground IP, or, and this is the more common scenario, the company will come to us and pay 50% of the project costs, where the university owns the foreground IP and industry has the option to license. So really, part of the Amber Award is a central pot of money that provides that co-funding to match the industry partners' funding when they work on a materials science project of interest to both partners. So for industry, the benefits of working with Amber include everything that's listed in the slide, but worth mentioning is that the industry has access to a talent pipeline. So those postgraduate students ending up working in industry, it's very useful for industry to work with us and have that access to the talent, as well as state-of-the-art research infrastructure. And also I should say that each project is professionally managed by a project manager who really holds the hand of industry, if you like, to talk them through, you know, the complexities of European funding, but also the really fine-grained detail professional project management that really builds up a trusted relationship with that company so that they come back for repeat business. Next slide. So this slide is an example of one of our industry projects working with a global pharmaceutical company called Astellas. So they had a problem of a sustainability problem where they have pharmaceutical blister packs that are made of aluminium and multiple polymers to prevent degradation of the medication that's contained. So because of the multi-material nature, they're quite hard to take apart. And what happens is that the packages end up going to landfill or being incinerated. So this collaboration proposed with one of our investigators proposed a novel biodegradable solvent-based technique to help in pulling those materials apart so that they can be more easily recovered and recycled. And a patent has been generated it's been filed for the technology. And currently Astellas are working with our investigator to see if the process is commercially viable, and they may license it if that all works out. Next slide. So this is just my last slide, and I'm just leaving you with a list of our industry partners that we've worked with. You can see the diversity of sector in there between ICT, medtech, energy companies, packaging companies. So yeah, that is, I think you can see materials it's a very diverse area. So that's my last slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deirdre. That was very interesting. I take home the necessity to build trust, the usefulness of having a dedicated manager to work with the company to establish the trust, but also that you organize your collaborations around companies that would come with a problem.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting approach. Now, I would like to ask you also about another aspect. Right now, research security, economic security, technology sovereignty are high on the political agenda of the upcoming commission in particular, and of course taking into account the difficult geopolitical context that we all live through right now. So do you have any guidelines or rules of conduct or regulations regarding these issues? Do you consider them when building partnerships with industry?
Yeah, we do. I mean, first, it's worth saying that advanced materials is obviously a critical EU technology and has dual use implications as well. So we have processes in place to carry out due diligence of any potential industry partners. We have a contract and IP manager in Amber who screens not just for financial risk, but also for ethical and legal risks, screens every company that we work with to make sure there are no issues of concern, that the company's values align with those of the European Union.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Many thanks, Deirdre. Kurt, now I will turn to you. You are Chief Business Officer at Medace, a company that supports academic groups and also other companies to develop their innovative medical concepts for clinical validation. So what is your experience with academia-industry collaboration and how to organize this effectively from the side of the private company?
Well, I'd like to build on Deirdre's first response, where she mentions communication. We're actually a spin-out from a very similar communication and a joint vision. I think that's critical. You have to bring people together, work together, face to face, to be really successful with these transitional projects.
Thank you. You also, I believe, brought some slides to share with the audience on what you're doing.
Excellent, thank you. And I'd like to thank you very much for the opportunity to present Medace. We're very happy that we can share a little bit about what we've been doing over the last 5 years. We call ourselves an accessible clinical development and manufacturing hub for startups. But what I want to start with, next slide please, is sharing why we've started Medace. And what we've learned by being part of the Research Institute is that for early stage startups who are really making that first steps out of academia into the industrial setting, it's really hard to acquire sufficient funding, especially given the fact that there's a high cost and burden of facility and equipment ownership. You know, Deirdre mentioned clean rooms. These are highly expensive facilities which require a huge capex investment. That's just simply not doable for startups to get the funding for. And then next to that, the challenges coming with ever more stringent and complex regulatory and quality requirements, which really puts another burden on a startup to make sure that they have the right resources with the breadth of knowledge and experience to overcome all of these challenges. And all of that obviously built on the fact that whatever your project is, clinical results is always uncertain. You will only know whether you're successful, decades down the line when you've gone through the full clinical trajectory. So that makes it really hard for startups to really take off. Next slide, please. So what we've built is a unique concept where we said, okay, let's bring it down to the basic. Any academic group, any startup is by far the expert in their specific project or product. And that's what we said, okay, let's get their knowledge, build all the supporting services and requirements around it so that together we can really drive these innovations forward. Next slide. And we looked at what's out there already today. I mean, obviously you can do everything yourself, but again, that's limited by the knowledge that's within the teams, brings that high cost of facility and equipment ownership. Or you can outsource everything to a contract manufacturing partner. The downside there is that, first of all, you lose control over the development because people tend to think that if they have a product developed in an R&D setting, that it's simply putting in a clean room and then that's it, but it's much more complex than that. So there's a lot of additional development work that needs to be done. And secondly, all the knowledge that's built up in that phase towards clinical testing remains ownership of the contract manufacturing partner and not the researcher or the academic crew or the startup itself. And that's something that we wanted to change, because we believe that the knowledge in the early stage of innovation needs to be much broader. And yes, you can do training and teaching programs, but having people learn it while they're doing it on the spot is as valuable, we believe. So we kind of combined the best of both worlds and came up with the MEDUS model, where we said, okay, let's take the concept of a contract manufacturer which has the facilities, the knowledge, combine that with the expertise of our clients, and then jointly drive that innovation forward. Next slide, please. Simply put, we have offers like services and facilities, but I think what's much more important is the model that I just explained. We're not only a work-learning environment, so all the knowledge that's built up remains ownership of our clients, which again is very different from a standard CMO, where you do a tech transfer the other way around. We want our clients to become experts in clean room manufacturing and quality regulatory, but we have also a very flexible offer. Again, thinking about the cost efficiency for early stage startups where they're working from grant to grant, or maybe have a first small seed investment, which doesn't run into the millions. At the end of the line, you still have to go through the entire cost trajectory. But if you make it in a much more flexible way, it's much easier for these academic routes or startups to bear. Next slide. So we started January 2020, just getting to our 5-year anniversary. And in the meantime, we've worked with over 60 clients. We've shown a number of examples here. What that tells me is that the need is clearly there. With the model we've built, a model that fills a clear gap that's very attractive to companies like the one you see here and other early stage startups. Thank you. Next slide, I think is, yep, that's it.
Thank you very much, Kurt. You also mentioned infrastructure, and Deidre also referred to that. I think that also resonates quite well with what we are doing at DG Research and Innovation on research and technology infrastructures, where startups are one of the dimensions in which we want to work. Now I would like to ask you a follow-up question about regulatory requirements and technical validation, which are actually more and more considered hurdles for market launch, and some of the reasons why some of the companies are escaping Europe as well, especially when you think about more radical innovations, more radical new products and solutions. So what is your experience in this area, and what do you think needs to be done?
Well, first of all, I like to say that I think regulations are needed. If you look back as to why regulations are put in place, take, for example, the usage of non-medical grade products in medical implants with silicone implants, and even more detrimental, going back a little bit further, the whole Softenon story, which kind of led to the GMP regulations being implemented. I hope that people still understand and see that regulation comes for a good reason. Products need to be safe, products need to have the right level of quality. So for me, it's non-negotiable, despite the fact what might be happening in other regions currently. Regulations are a good thing. At the same time, I acknowledge that they can be perceived as a burden or as a hurdle, because one thing that I believe is missing is when new regulations get implemented, people tend to forget the impact on the people where the responsibility is placed at. With the MDR, it's placed on the notified bodies, on the manufacturers. And if you look at the current backlog with notified bodies in Europe, people who implemented the regulation should have thought about the impact on resources needed. And if they would have built that into the way they implement this, I think a lot of the hurdles that we currently see could have been avoided. Secondly, when you look at the manufacturers, and especially whether they're academic groups or startups, the problem is that the required resources are often not there. They work in small teams with different skill set or with lack of or limited resources, and that's also why we've built our model the way we build it. Is that we, as I said, we use a work learning model where we train our clients. In the beginning, we take up a lot of responsibility, but gradually we try to transfer that to our clients when they get more knowledgeable. And it's a step-by-step approach. Yes, it's complex and it's interacted in many different ways. So you need to take it step by step and start with, basic document practices, and over time you can take them into the more depth. And the final thing is, we help companies and academic groups understand that some simple terms are often much more complicated. Just to give you an example, a lot of companies come to us and say, I need a clean room. And they think that they can take their process from the lab and move it into a clean room, and that's it. Where we have to explain to them, look, the impact is much broader. It impacts every part of your product and your process, including your reagents, including your equipment. And that, I think, is something that is overlooked. So hopefully in the future, people will think, okay, what's the impact for the people where we put this responsibility, and what can we do proactively so that we don't end up with these huge backlogs like we see today.
Thank you, Kurt. Now, obviously, coming from a public organization that does regulation, hearing that regulation is good is nice. But I take your point also that there needs to
I
be
want to make
proper...
sure you also heard the second point.
No, that's why I'm going to refer to that right now, that I take your point that there needs to be a proper impact assessment to really understand the broader impact on different actors that are engaged, and that would be then engaged in the execution of the regulation. Indeed. Thanks a lot. Now I have a couple of questions to both of you, actually. As I think we also understand from your presentations, intermediaries like knowledge transfer offices have an important supportive role to play in the collaboration between industry and academia. However, there are also limits to their role. What do you think are these limits?
I think that technology transfer offices or knowledge transfer offices suffer quite often from bad press. I think they can be perceived sometimes by possibly the Commission or funding agencies as being quite risk averse, but much like regulation, that's their job. They have to. I guess they have to protect the institution, but also the collaboration with industry as well. I think in my experience in Trinity College, where 70% of our investigators are based, our TTO has actually been very, very helpful, and they go beyond that standard capture, the capture of IP and the protection and commercialization aspects, and they actually provide a bit of mentoring to, let's say, senior postdocs that are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, maybe interested in becoming a CEO of a spin-out from the university. So they provide a sort of like a mentoring to those types of people, and they sort of they can ignite leadership in scientists as well. And I think they also have great access to networks, business networks, and also help with investment opportunities, help to find private investment for the university spinouts. I hope that answers your question.
I think it does.
Okay.
Kurt, how about you?
Well, I want to add to that. I think, again, they play a crucial role in the whole innovation trajectory. Coming back to the bad press, I came from a conference in London just yesterday, and while I was listening to a panel, yet again, there was an investor, a VC, that said, we too often run into discussions with knowledge transfer officers where they try to claim a too big of a stake from a short-term revenue opportunity, which I understand, because obviously they're also driven by their KPIs, and they also need to show that to their institutes a return on the investment. However, my hope is that we found a way that they can switch that short-term focus to a much more longer-term focus, because then they can also understand that there's many steps after when they have done their work. You know, there's that first investment, and in our industry, and the same goes, I think, for materials, there's a lot of follow-up investments. So by the end, you know, everybody will have a small piece of a very big cake, hopefully. If it fails, you know, nobody will have anything. So hopefully choosing that small piece of a big cake rather than trying to protect the biggest piece of the cake possible is something that I think can help the success of innovation in Europe. But again, I understand where they're coming from, and I understand that this is a model that has been implemented decades ago, but I would hope that they look at some alternatives. We were just discussing before this this meeting some examples from across Europe and Scandinavia. Sweden was brought up as a country that does it differently. So for me, that's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that. So hopefully that's spread around Europe and say, okay, what can we do to the model to make it much more efficient for all parties involved?
Yeah. We can learn from each other.
Exactly.
I can see we already have some questions from the audience, but before we turn to those, I have a final question to you from my side. How important do you think it is to design sector-specific measures or tools to promote this collaboration? Does this collaboration work in a sector-specific way, or it's more targeting certain audience or certain types of companies?
I think that it is sector specific. I think you do have to target measures to different sectors. One of the things that we're trying to do in Amber, particularly in the materials for health theme, is cluster activities, so that around a scientific question or a research focus, and then have a campaign almost to say, here is Amber's expertise in this area. And one of those campaigns, for example, is looking at regenerative tissue engineering for restorative dentistry. So endodontics and the pulp inside the tooth, what sort of materials can be, new materials can be found to help regenerate, you know, decaying tooth pulp, which, you know, this affects everyone. You know, this is something that everyone's got teeth, you know. So this is something that we're trying to do and make these sort of clusters, maybe around sort of hydrogen as well, materials for hydrogen transport. And we try to cluster these activities and then go to, if we have one PI, even better if we have 2 or 3 who can help solve the problem. And we will take that further and try to work up a useful, impactful project from that activity.
Mm-hmm. So that's interesting, because you work with Amber on advanced materials, which is a cross-cutting technology, and at a certain moment you see that actually you need to be sector-specific to apply that technology, and then each sector will have a different way in which this can be used. Thank you. And Kurt, how about you? You also see that in your field?
I agree, and quite frankly, my hope is that we would stop asking this question, because I've been involved with early stage innovation for over a decade, and this question comes up every so often, and the answer is always the same. I've never heard anybody say we don't need industry-specific measures. So my hope is like, okay, let's all conclude that we need this, and then move to the next set of questions. And what are these industry-specific? What are they for materials? What are they for health? And then we can kind of, start implementing them. So yeah, I'm kind of fed up with this particular question. It's like,
I think we go down that road with the recent reports that were prepared at the EU level. Go down to the different sectors, and they need to recognize the specificity of these sectors.
Yeah.
Okay, let's turn now to the questions from the audience. So maybe, Kurt, I will start with the first question to you. How do you balance knowledge sharing and transfer? Okay, now the question disappeared, so that's not very helpful.
But I think I remember it. It was about sharing knowledge versus confidentiality.
There it is. How do you balance knowledge sharing and transfer and confidentiality, indeed?
Yeah, well, first of all, when we start working with academic groups or early stage startups, IP is already protected. So whatever needs to be protected is protected. At the same time, we have built in our model the measures so that there can never be any spreading, whether it's separation from activities in time or location. So the research settings are often shared labs, but anything that happens in the clean room is obviously fully controlled and separate from all the other activities. If need be, we can block them off because we have some see-through glasses so you can look into the clean rooms. So we take that very seriously, but within the institute that we were part of, where we also worked in the shared environment, and now in the last 5 years at MedAce, we never had any confidentiality issue whatsoever. I also think you don't have to underestimate the experts that are working in these teams, who are very much aware of what they can and cannot share.
Okay, thank you. Deidre, can you outline the engagement process with industry and maybe expand on the negative and positive experiences that you have when bringing academia and industry together?
So we have a team of business development managers whose job it is to go out to industry partners who work in any advanced material, any of the sectors, electronics, mobility, transport, health, construction is another one. So our business development managers, they go out to these companies and they have meetings with them and very simply, ask them, do you have any problems in your manufacturing or your in construction? It might be some sort of maybe an insulation material, anything to do with advanced materials. They try to focus on what the research question is and whether we in Amber have the research expertise to solve that particular question. So we'll then kind of bring the company in and have a bilateral meeting with them, and also manage expectations around what each partner can deliver. And that brings me to any negative experiences we've had, and we learn a lot from this, is around managing the expectations of the industry partner, and not, over-promising perhaps, just to be realistic about the goals and the milestones in the industry project. So generally these bilateral projects they're quite short, relatively speaking. They could be anything from 3 months to 2 years long. They might fund a postdoc and some consumables, and be jointly funded, usually between Amber and the company. And that's generally how it works.
Okay, great, thank you. So, Kurt, what do you think are the common obstacles that startups you work with have encountered? Have you had a look at this? How did you help to address these?
There's many, and they're very diverse. I think with all of the companies that we work with or the academic groups, there hasn't been one where there's not been some sort of obstacle or something that went wrong. And as I said, it's very diverse. It could be a specific material which is not available in the required grade. It could be equipment that's not suitable to be used in the clean room, all the way to the personnel that in the end might not be properly trained or doesn't fit with the activities required. And yeah, obviously we deal with them if and when they occur. So solutions are also very broad. I think if there's one general advice I can give is that people should plan for this when they're making up their financial planning and their business planning. Because as I said, with all the companies that we've worked with, there's always something that happens. Could be small, could be big, and the last thing you want is that you run out of money before you hit a milestone, whether it's for a subsidy or grant, or a milestone that you agreed upon with your investors. So plan for it.
Thank you. We have a very active audience today, which is great. So I have another question to Deidre. How do you manage joint IP and co-financing?
Oh, I was hoping this wouldn't be my question, but here we go.
Well, give it a shot.
we have internally in Amber and also in the tech transfer offices of the partner institutions. As I mentioned before, when it's a co-funded project, 50% of Amber funding matches the 50% put in by the company, and generally that might fund a postdoc who might spend some time in industry, some time in Amber, so they the confidentiality issues have to be really, really well managed there. But our tech transfer office would generally advise us on IP. The national IP guidelines say that if any portion of the project is funded by a national funding agency, the university owns the IP. So that's the default position really when it's jointly funded. But what does the industry get out of it? They get an option to license the technology, but they also get the benefit of research staff working on the proposal, and there is a kind of a nice two-way exchange of knowledge between the company and academia. And sometimes the industry researcher will come in and spend some time as a researcher in residence in the laboratories. Sometimes the academic-based postdoc will go out to industry and gather some business experience in the company. And generally, when that happens, sometimes that postdoc will be offered a job with the company. So that's a nice benefit.
Yeah. So now, interesting to hear indeed that one of the deals that work for the industry is actually the fact that you upgrade their technological skills of their own staff and the knowledge of their own staff. We have, I think, a final question to both of you. So how do you overcome internal R&D sectors in businesses being in competition with external stakeholders from academia? Have you experienced that kind of situations?
I'm actually not entirely sure what's meant by the question. Do they mean? Yeah, and that's hard to ask because it's online.
I think maybe I will see how to rephrase that. I could imagine that there could be situations in which there are academic groups working on a certain technology, and there is a business, there is a company that works on that as well, and they kind of naturally can enter into competition while engaging with different partners.
Yeah, I understand it there after taking it apart. So generally, our industry partners are a combination of SMEs and multinationals. Generally, the multinationals will have an R&D base in Ireland, usually. And yes, I think there is, but that R&D base can collaborate with our academic institution as well. So I don't see it as competition with, the academic industry partnership being in competition with the R&D unit of a multinational. I think they're complementary activities. Once the IP is agreed on, they can be very complementary activities. And Intel, for example, are one of our long-standing partners in that area. Then looking at SMEs, which we really, I think the SME cohort are the people we really want to support. And they're often quite small businesses that don't have an R&D unit. So we can, they can basically use Amber as their R&D unit. And especially with SMEs, we can also add as a carrot to dealing with us. We can bring them into European consortium grants as well as partners. So that's another dimension to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Deirdre.
Yeah, listening to Deirdre and thinking about the question some more, I have to think back to one of the projects from within the Research Institute that we were spun out from. Collaboration between two universities, an academic hospital and a large corporate in material science. And at a certain point, the project got stopped. There were some technical issues with the product itself, and the academic groups actually had found a nice solution to overcome those technical issues. However, from a business point of view, that would make the product so complex to manufacture that the cost of goods would be really high. And then they said, look, it's very hard to claim a spot in the market starting from these cost of goods. So there was a clear conflict. And what happened is that the academic partners actually took the project further back into their academic setting. So, the joint project got stopped. They took it back, and just about a month ago, I actually saw a paper or a presentation on how they further developed the technology. And I think that's the beauty, is sometimes you have to accept that the interests might be different, and then people have to go their own ways again, so they kind of separate. But that could lead to new insights from the academic institutes, new innovative ways to overcome the technical issues. And who knows, maybe you then have a better starting point to actually bring that to a market. So yeah, I think it's part of life, and you sometimes have to accept and see that everybody goes back in their own fields of interest.
Thank you. I think that it is slowly time to wrap up. So would you like to say a final message, shortly, what our audience should take away home from this session, if they should just remember one thing? Deidre?
I would say industry-academia collaboration is essential if we want to achieve the goals of the Green Deal and the twin transition. For sure, we do need to kind of ally the real world experience of industry with that sort of I suppose that curiosity driven fundamental science that's happening in academia. And I think both sides of the table see the value of working together in that way. There are a lot of synergies between them. So that's long may it continue, industry, academia collaboration. That's my message.
Long term.
Yeah.
That's a good message, Kurt.
Well, I like to end with a positive message. I think today we've talked a lot about some of the issues and the challenges for industry academic collaboration. However, we're two examples, I think, of the fact that it's doable. It's not easy, it's complex, but when people have the right mindset and the willingness to collaborate, you can always find a way. And it might take different shapes or forms, like whether it's a research institute or how we set up the model. So it is doable, and I think people should hold on to that. Put in the hard work, find a way that works for whatever setting you're in, and then you will be able to drive that academic industrial collaboration. And the second thing is, and I think the same might go for Deirdre, it's nice for you guys to invite us and share our knowledge. There's a lot of best practices that I know or within the DG that have access to it. So I think that also shows that you're willing to reach out, and that we also can have this clear communication and discussion. And I think if everybody keeps talking to each other, then we will get there.
Thank you, Kurt. Yes, keeping talking to each other is important. I think we are very much committed to that. Also, the positive message that it's doable. It's great news because we believe that it's really necessary.
Yeah.
So it's good to hear that it's doable. Many thanks for joining us today. And many thanks also to you, our dear audience. I enjoyed tremendously our conversation today. I hope you found it insightful as well. If you did, and also if you didn't, we would like to actually know your opinion on the session. We have created a feedback questionnaire that you would be able to access through our portal and on the event page of this talk. And please take a minute and provide us feedback, help us improve this format as well. I would also like to remind you that a call is open to submit your best practice, and that relates a little bit to Kurt, what you said. You actually have an opportunity to propose to us ideas that could bring you to this studio. And then share your experience with the broader audience, I think, at one of the talks next year. So I think that would be great as well. It was a pleasure to host you today, and I wish everyone a great afternoon.